Hello, if you're seeing this the day it was posted, know that this is one of two runs around the concept of gift giving that I have uploaded today. Last year I made a poll going over which video I should beat with the gifts and rewards rule set, and the winner ended up being Oblivion. The other options were Fable 1 and Skyrim. I genuinely just wanted to do the runs in both games so badly that I decided I would do a double upload this year as a treat. In other words, I am giving all of you two gifts on my birthday. You may return the favour by subscribing. Anyway, Skyrim started this one last year, albeit briefly, before focusing on that Oblivion run. Due to having a year's worth of planning from a certain point of view, I am at the very least confident in how things are going to start off. Also, much like Oblivion and Fallout 4, there's not really a damn thing I can do about the main quest and its abundance of required quest items you need to loot, such as the Dragonstone and Bleak Falls, as well as the Elder Scroll itself. Again, I am split on the idea whether quest items needed for progression invalidate the run or not. Many people seem to think they're fine so long as they are not weapons or armor that I'm actively using. But as I was able to get through Fallout 3 and New Vegas without picking up anything, I am still torn on adjusting the rules. Speaking of rules, it's of course the same as the last gifts and rewards videos. I can only use things that are physically given to me. As self-explanatory as always. Now, with all that out of the way, let's begin. Race selection, and Breton is by far and large the most obvious choice. I'll have next to zero magical defenses throughout the playthrough, no doubt, so their passive resistance to magic would be a no-brainer for survivability. That said, sometimes you need to envision the man you want to become. A friendly airborne lizard saves us from the trouble of trying to reattach our head, so we run off to join Hadvar in the process. We need to follow him as he has the key to one of the doors. If I went with Ralof, I'd have to loot the Imperials instead for the same key. Typically, I would dart on ahead at this stage and be out of Helgen in the next minute, but for the sake of this run, it's very important that I stick to Hadvar like a bad rash as he clears out the first few rooms. The reason is simple: once the Stormcloaks in the torture chamber are dealt with, Hadvar will draw attention to the locked cells. Once this happens, he will then urge you to pick the lock and hand over 12 lockpicks. As far as I am aware, these are the only ones I will be given in the entire run, so they are worth more than all of the gold in Tamriel. Well, now that I have them, I can ignore the rest of the enemies, escape, and begin heading for Riverwood. No standing stones today, of course. As I helped his nephew, Alvor has a random assortment of items he hands to you upon arriving in town. This includes some food, wine, something for my dignity, another lockpick, an iron ingot, and a ring, and most important of all, 3 health potions. Probably going to end up sitting on those for 90% of the playthrough, let's be real. But that's not all he can help us with. By offering to help him around the forge, he will give us more ingots and leather to craft an Iron Dagger and a hide helmet, as well as the materials to improve their quality. The helmet isn't too important for what I have planned, but this little toothpick is going to shine brighter than the sun today. While gold cannot be used to purchase gear due to my silly rules, it can be used for services such as transportation or inns. Never used the latter, you will see why soon enough. Anyway, I do the quick quest with Sven and his inability to talk to women so that I will get 25 gold pieces for my troubles. Nearest carriage is in Whiterun, so onwards we go. Slaughtered a wolf on the way. It's not important nor a difficult fight, but it is the first kill of the run. I took a few swings at the giant outside of town too. I can't do much, but it stops Ayala from yelling at me, and that makes me happy. I spend all but 5 of my coins on the carriage to take me to Riften. I feel just like name-dropping the city has already begun to make the next steps of my master plan all the more obvious. I persuade the guard to let me in as I don't believe you can fail this check, to which point I immediately begin by overthrowing the tyrannical rule of Grelod over the children at the orphanage. Very much enjoy that despite committing murder in view of multiple witnesses, not one person cared enough about the old hag to report her new breathing hole to the guards. With the hit completed before the assignment, I now need to make my way north for Windhelm to turn in the quest. Not enough gold for the carriage, so I'm hoofing it north on foot. Should have been a relatively inconsequential trip, but you know me, I get distracted far too easily, and today was no different. Specifically, I ended up wiping out the bandits inhabiting Fort Greenwall. Nothing too taxing, they're your typical level 1s. I may only have an Iron Dagger and spent most of the fight knocking on their shields, but as they seemed to lack any way to break my quick assault, I was not worried. The chief could have been a problem, but let's not pretend cheesing him out with sneak attacks wasn't an option. Simply walk in, get one off, then sprint back out of the building. After waiting an hour, he will then return to his room without healing himself, allowing me to repeat the process until she was low enough for me to easily win the fight. Sneak attacks like this get you a lot of sneak and one-handed experience naturally, especially early on, so doing this was enough to level me up twice. Every level I am increasing health. Again, limited defense, so this was the best option in my opinion. As for my 2 perk points, well, one goes into making stealth easier, and the other I bank for the time. Not much from here to Windhelm other than a bizarre mammoth mating ritual that both me and Maik had to bear witness to, as well as enough wolf ambushes to nearly trick me into thinking I'm playing the original Dragon's Dogma. In town, I use my lockpicks to break into the Aretino residence so that I may flaunt my murderous tendencies to a 12-year-old, also that I may be awarded a plate. Plate's not important, what is that entry to the Dark Brotherhood is now open to me as long as I can find a bed to sleep in. Back to Whiterun to solve that small dilemma. Upon arriving in town, I continue my trend of mooching off the local blacksmiths by agreeing to present Adrian's sword to the Jarl. She then hands me the sword and I nestle it in my back pocket forever, as it never hurts to have a 2-handed steel sword on standby should the Iron Dagger start lacking. Right, back to solving the bed issue. I take that steel greatsword up to Jorvaskr and use it to pummel Vilkas into submission, granting me a place among the companions, and in doing so, I am given a free bed to use at my leisure. It works, as by going for a snooze, Astrid is somehow able to kidnap and swoop me away to a shack miles away without any of the companions noticing. When she presents me with a choice, I just choose to off all 3 participants, as I am a little overachiever. Still gotta make it to the Sanctuary of course, but while I won't be using them, I was at the very least smart enough to mark the standing stones at the beginning, so I can fast travel back there to help speed up the journey. Bumped into a zombie on my travels. Won't lie, took me off guard for a moment before I remembered that they were added in the anniversary update, and that they were ultimately just reskinned Draugr. Still, another entity for me to practice my 2-handed skills on is welcome. At the Sanctuary, and we make it by the screaming whispered doorbell to be greeted by Astrid once more. For being indoctrinated into the family, we are gifted the full shrouded set, meaning not only do we have some actual armor to stop us getting torn to shreds, but we are now on the way to perfecting the build that I had in mind. For context, the set comes with some enchantments. The body grants 50% poison resistance, and the cowl increases bow damage by 20%. These two aren't all that important. The boots and the gloves, however, are god tier. The boots are muffled, meaning I make 0 noise when I'm in stealth, and the gloves double the damage of any backstabs that we land. Backstabs being the name for sneak attacks with melee weapons specifically, if that wasn't obvious. Right now, that means the dagger will do 6 times normal damage if I can land a hit without being spotted. This damage can then be further increased with 2 perks in the sneak tree. One of which we can get right now is by heading back to Embershard Mine, I can start eliminating the bandits from the shadows. This increases sneak to 30, and thanks to that perk point we saved earlier, I can use it right away to unlock the backstab perk, not to be confused with the backstab enchantment we just mentioned. What this does is make sneak attacks do 6 times damage. Combined with the gloves, that is 12 times the dagger's base damage. The dagger currently does around 6, so we are looking at a single hit doing 72 damage. This early in the game, that is more than enough to one-shot just about everything that isn't an end of dungeon boss or a dragon.
But wait! There's more!
By going even further beyond, by which I mean getting sneak to 50, we will have access to Assassin's Blade, which specifically gives daggers a times 15 modifier from stealth. Clearly done as a way to give daggers some viability in the late game, but I must assume they forgot about the Shrouded Gloves enchantment when making this perk, because having both of them gives a times 30 damage multiplier, which is insane. We won't see the effects of that for a while, but don't worry, when we get that perk, I will show just how busted it can truly be. Honestly, it probably won't even take that long to reach. Like I said, getting stealth kills like this just showers you with sneak experience. It's causing me to level up pretty fast though, so I suppose the trade-off is that enemies will start to scale with us faster. Regardless, I clear the mine without anybody so much as getting a whiff of me, to which point I continue to bloody my knife by taking on some of the lesser contracts for the Dark Brotherhood. All easy targets naturally, but I got into some fun side adventures on the way. A random travelling Nord, for example, thought it was a wise idea to insult the man wearing the edgy black hooded outfit with a blood-covered knife. Sometimes natural selection is all too easy. Between finding my targets, I ended up, but where else, another fort. The squatters of this one put up more of a fight, mainly because they were mages. Could start regretting that Breton decision, but it's my birthday, I wish to be a lizard and so I am. The ones outside I can one-shot with no problems, but things get a tad too hot to handle indoors once I'm spotted. Joys of a glass cannon stealth build, I suppose. I can't complain. Thing is, I didn't even have to adjust my tactics. For reasons unbeknownst to me, the apprentice fire mage took a solid blow to the head in our next encounter, and this caused her to just stop fighting back. Some sort of brain damage, I suppose. Works for me, so I clear out the fort, and then proceed with the nearby scheduled shiving in Iverstead. Another positive outside of the fun department of doing this is I am marking locations on the map I'll need for the main quest later, so I'm hoping I should be able to just fly through that when the time comes. Final contract was on Dawnstar, and I didn't even bother to deal with them in private, just took them out right in the middle of town. The guards are fast approaching me, yes, but with a well-placed jump I can make it up and over this snowy mound, out of their sight, allowing me to fast travel back to safety. Rather than turn in the contracts right away, I had a mini quest for Farkas that I'd picked up to clear out a random cave, so I went to do that first too. Nothing special, just some ghosts who were vastly underprepared for what I was going to throw their way. Granted, they sounded against the whole ordeal, so perhaps I was doing them a favour. It culminates, rather quickly at that, with me falling through an obvious trapdoor into a cage. When the wizard turns his back, I simply pick the lock and then slit his throat. I return all of my tasks to their respective factions and gain a nice sum of gold for my efforts. Again, only going to be used for carriage rides when I don't feel like travelling the land, although I suppose paying off my bounty in Dawnstar wouldn't hurt. Joker from the movie Joker has appeared in the Sanctuary, so I grab my next contract and get out of there ASAP before he starts talking about society. Before I do that though, I figured it couldn't hurt to get a start in the main quest. After all, Bleak Falls has a lot of enemies to get levels off. I wasn't able to stealth my way around the first couple of groups, but it was nothing that Balgriff's greatsword couldn't handle. Goes without saying, but excess perks that I've accumulated from now being level 7 have gone into upping one- and two-handed damage. There are some mandatory fights I can't stealth cheese my way through after all, so it's best to be prepared for them. After dealing with the giant frostbite spider, we need to cut down Arvel in more ways than one, as well as take his golden claw. Again, no way around this, it's for the main story. If you want to count this as a run-ending catastrophe, I don't blame you. On the bright side, right after this is where the experience began to flood in. Over half of all the Draugr in Bleak Falls are asleep in their tombs, so you can easily walk over to them and take them out with stealth one at a time. Doing things this way, I not only reach level 8, but I managed to get sneak to 50 in the process, so say hello to the disgusting stealth build, everybody. Due to perks in the one-handed tree, the Iron Dagger now does 8 damage per swing. With the times 30 modifier, we have jumped from 72 damage up to around 240, give or take a bit, depending on enemy armor and resistances. Remember what I said before about only end of dungeon bosses being able to survive? Well, that's not true anymore. Ironically, I wasn't able to test that out on the Overlord at the end, as he spotted me when he popped out. Disappointing, but nothing Old Reliable can't handle. Also, gotta grab that stone, of course. I head back to Whiterun to do the story stuff, and for my efforts, I am handed a leather chest piece. I would have honestly preferred nothing. This leads to the first dragon, and there isn't a lot I can do until it lands, so I kinda just chill out for a moment while the guards die around me. Once he does come within stabbing distance, I boldly tried to land a sneak attack. Of course, it did not work as he knew I was there, but figured it would be worth a shot. I then switched off to the greatsword once more and stuck to his right side, all the while cleaving through his health bar. He didn't pay me much mind, probably due to getting pelted from all sides, so I was free to keep up the onslaught until he went down. The Dragon Soul and Fus is neat, I suppose, but the real reward was the Axe of Whiterun. Due to my level, it was a two-handed orcish battle axe. It came with a turn undead enchantment as well, which could genuinely come in handy in some of the crazier dungeons if I got swarmed. Can't complain, solid weapon to have going forward. At this point, I take a slight detour from the main quest to head back to the Dark Brotherhood. Figured it would be the best way to get the most out of this build after all. This takes us to Markarth, where we are to get the details from Yuri, and we are to kill a man named Elaine, as well as Nilsene's Shattershield. The former is in a Dwemer ruin, the other just in her home in Windhelm. By continuing to speak with her, she will hand over 2 vials of lotus poison. I won't be using them for this quest, as I really don't need to, but they could come in handy in some of those forced encounters that I mentioned. The path to Elaine is surrounded by bandits, which is fine by me, means I get to grind the axe on something. As expected, it is quite good for now. Also, the charge won't go down unless I strike an undead enemy, so I don't need to use it sparingly on living creatures. The axe could continue to wipe the floor indoors, but I spent time getting those sneak levels for a reason, so I am going to use and abuse to my heart's content. I can't take out the target stealthily with melee due to him being in the open, but I can at the very least still get the sneak attack off for the one shot. I just need to deal with his friends the old-fashioned way afterwards. As for the optional target, like I said, she's in her home in Windhelm. It's as simple as breaking in and catching her while she's asleep, as well as anybody else in the house. Being real, the worst part was breaking multiple lockpicks on the front door. For going out of my way to sharpen my dagger on Nilsene's spine, Muri gives me her ring. All it does is increase the strength of your created potions, sadly not something we can make use of in other words. Some Brotherhood snooping, followed by picking up 3 more nothing contracts from Nazir, so I head off to the 7,000 steps because why not? I continue to practice my skills while going up the mountain. To really show off the power we wield, watch how it just decimates the Frost Troll. May not have taken him down in one go, but that's still hella impressive if you ask me. Greybeards now, and it should be noted that I am allowed to use the shouts that they teach me. After all, they themselves refer to them imparting their knowledge as gifts, so who am I to argue? I attempted stealth in Oostengrav, but considering it's an all-out war between necromancers and Draugr, it didn't take long before I was spotted. I just don't have the necessary abilities to sneak past all of this fighting. MGS4, this ain't. I'm not mad that I'm using the axe for the record, I love me a good two-handed weapon of any description. I just wanted to switch it up a little, you know, considering that's the playstyle I typically go for if allowed. Fighting past the final enemies and we arrive at the Knot Horn. Luckily, you don't have to pick up the note, you can simply read it, so all is right with the world. I continue to jump back and forth between my commitments as I once more hop over to my assassin side hustle, this time tasked with dispatching the Orc Bard in Morthal. Mirak's cultists attempted to confront me here too, but I just blatantly ignored them and let the townsfolk deal with their ramblings. The Bard was snoozing when I arrived, so that was easy, as were the other residents, even the town vampire. She took 2 hits, but nothing a little fake surrendering can't solve. Pretty sure fake surrendering like that is a war crime, but it's not like she can report me. Speaking of vampires, my other contract was won as well. Much less health though, unfortunately for him. Getting my cash prizes, I am told to go speak to Modieri in a ruin near Whiterun to set us down the path of regicide. Before that though, I figured I could go for another dagger upgrade, couldn't I? Conveniently, the one we're after is about a minute down the road from where we just offed that bloodsucker. Volder here has been injured in a Spriggan attack and requires healing. We can patch him up right as rain by having him chug one of the health potions we got from Alvor. Thank God I like hoarding these things. Once he is feeling like not dying, he suggests he needs to head back into the cave and avenge his friends who were in fact also killed by the same creatures. Now we need to offer to help him perform said task, but not alone. See, if you deal with the problem yourself, there is a random glitch that can occur that makes him hostile upon your return. We need him to be both alive and friendly if we want him to hand over the goods. So we just drag him along and make sure he doesn't get mauled. That's remarkably easy to do, by the way, as it's only 3 Spriggans and a bear, all of which are spread out far enough that you don't need to worry about Volder running off to fight one by himself. I like to think that the axe does more damage on the sentient tree ladies for obvious reasons. Once they can photosynthesize no longer, Volder thanks us and then hands over his lucky dagger. Damage-wise, yes, it is the same as the Iron Dagger, but the real strength lies in 2 things. First off, it has a 25% chance to crit with each strike. That's damage that ignores resistances as well, for the record. And secondly, this will allow me to dual-wield daggers. Considering you can attack with both daggers at once, and they can both benefit from the sneak attack bonus, that means we are looking at a dual strike doing around 480 damage, or, even crazier, the triple slash power attack from stealth, if all 3 hits connect, will do a staggering 720 damage, with the potential for a little more on top if that crit chance procs. Case in point how strong this is, look at these giants. And people say Stealth Archer is the best sneaky build. I don't use the dual-wielded daggers all the time, I would like to say because it's overkill, but truthfully I just kept forgetting to equip the iron in my offhand. Not that it mattered too much, as the single was still more than enough. If it wasn't clear, I kept just heading into random caves and whatnot to abuse this power, as it's been so long since I've done a proper stealth build like this that I was frankly just having way too much fun. Eventually, I do meet up with the man, and after heading back to Riften to get his Elder Council amulet appraised, we can push ahead with the rest of the Dark Brotherhood's master plans. First task goes off without a hitch, just jump down behind the bride while she's giving her speech and deliver her wedding gift personally. This rewards me with the ability to summon Lucien Lechance. I tried to get some use out of him, but to spoil things a bit, he was being remarkably glitchy today and only once ever played ball. Next up was Gaius Maro up in Dragon's Bridge. Considering it was in the Solitude area, the guards were still out for my head from the last task. The first one who noticed me, I just led back and over the bridge until he was out of earshot from his friends, so that I could take him out without causing a scene. The only other guard in town was completely unaware of my presence, so I just made sure he stayed that way permanently. The Pentius Oculatus, and by proxy the Marrows, aren't a part of the same faction as the guards, so they won't be rushing to arrest me on sight. The plan was to take out Gaius right as he left town, as I didn't care about the bonus for dealing with him in one of the cities. Right as I was about to spring into action, a random bounty collector popped up and demanded that I pay for my crimes. Had the gold for that, no doubt, but didn't feel like parting with it so soon. He is tougher than your average bandit, but not by much. I'm glad that Gaius doesn't seem to bat an eye at what's transpiring next to him though, as once this bounty hunter is dealt with, I just whip out the knives and deal with him in seconds. While I may not have went for the bonus, I at the very least used the bounty hunter's corpse to my advantage so that I could stage a scene that made it look like the two got in a scuffle that cost both of them their lives. Upon my return to the sanctuary, try not to be alarmed, but the literal crazy person did in fact go nuts and stab somebody. Naturally, being the only competent member of this family, we are sent to track him down, although not before Astrid gifts us Shadowmere. Probably won't get used very much, but still, nice to have. Tracking down Cicero through the Dawnstar Sanctuary is easy enough. The ghosts don't put up much of a fight, and he is far too interested in keeping his insides in to retaliate. The only problem was the Udafricht. Udafrichti? The troll, the funky troll. The only problem was the funky troll. Fighting it head on led to pain. So much pain. Took more than a few attempts to sneak up on it as well, as it always snapped around most times. Even when I finally did manage to get a hit, it took way more to finish it off than anything else I'd ran into up to this point. Sadly, this is pretty much where my Dark Brotherhood shenanigans have to end. See, I can get to the gourmet simple enough and kill him for the next part, but I am required to loot his rite of passage off him to proceed. I know, quest items and all that, but I'm trying to restrict that to just the main quest. Besides, even if there was a way to get by without it, once I make it to the kitchen, I'd be forced to pick up and wear a chef's hat to proceed anyway, which is also a no-go. Disappointing, but such is the way of things. At the very least, next up is the second mandatory dragon fight, meaning I get to do this.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Next would be the embassy, and truly, I am in my element. So long as you're patient while the Thalmor are on patrol, it's easy enough to either give them the slip or the slit, depending on your preference. This was also the area I briefly mentioned earlier where I would need a lockpick. 99% of the time, you would just loot the key off one of the guards to enter the dungeon. Not an option today, so instead I had to pick the expert lock to get on by. Just trial and error until I hit the sweet spot, of course, but still, I suck at the lockpicking in Skyrim. Give me Oblivion's system any day of the week. Is that a controversial opinion? After dealing with the last of the High Elves, I was able to open up the nearby chest and read, but not take the dossier on Esbern to proceed. I did have to loot a key from one of the agents who came in with Malborn, as it's the only way to open the trap door, but it is a quest item, I guess. Getting to and out with Esbern from the sewers, and I mainly relied on the axe. Thalmor are squishy enough that it's not a hassle. This leads nicely into Alduin's Wall. I'm speeding through this, I am aware, but there's not much to go over, to be honest. Hell, Alduin's Wall requires you to fight like only 2 Forsworn, both of which typically get blasted by Delphine and Esbern upon entering. After sacrificing our blood, next stop is to meet Parthenax, but we all know what we really need is the Elder Scroll. That requires a trip to Septimus, which is relatively safe other than gravity. He hands over the lexicon after you talk to him for a bit, so no problems here. Alright, you've all seen me tread through the Falmer-infested Dwemer ruins and Blackreach a multitude of times by now, right? So, this time I decided to do something a tad different. We are just going to skip right to the scroll. See, by coming to this spot on the map, after flexing on more giants I might add, you can find this locked lift. This leads right to the room where the Elder Scroll is housed. Of course, the idea being it's a quick way to get back to the surface after you finish the quest. You are probably expecting me to say, and then I grabbed a nearby wooden plate and clipped through the door. Don't be absurd. I haven't been given any wooden plates, they are not allowed. I did something much, much easier. I simply positioned myself in front of the lever, and then did the dual-wield power attack with the daggers. This attack always pushes your character forward ever so slightly. In this case, just enough that I am within pulling distance of the lever, opening the gate, and allowing me to descend and grab the scroll after the puzzle. All that remains is the climb to Parthenax, and while Clear Skies is allowed thanks to being given its knowledge by the Greybeards, I figured I hadn't used Shadowmere all that much, if at all, so I used him to scale up the side of the mountain instead for fun. We all know what time it is now. Hardest fight of the run. Alduin 1. No stealth allowed, so here's hoping some of the excess perk points that I dropped into the two-handed tree make the axe viable enough to not warrant me ripping my hair out. The answer? Kinda. Alduin scales to a slightly higher level than the player, so the fight isn't always a complete wash, and as I hit around level 16 during the fight, I think it is fair to say I am past the point and then some where I should be using orcish weapons. Fighting him head on, while I can put out okay damage, never lasts long as, remember, no magic resistances on my end. I can stagger him out of his fire and frost breath with either a well-timed power attack or guard break, but doing so rapidly completely drains my stamina bar. At which point he then will tend to finish me off. I make use of clear skies at the very least to try and stop the raining fireballs from melting me. A slight double-edged sword, as yes, while I may not be dying to fire, I do then have to wait around for the cooldown so I can use Dragon Rend to make him vulnerable. Meaning, while I am waiting, there's nothing really stopping him from cracking open the skies again, rendering the shout pointless. At least I remembered my last 2 healing potions, which could save me from death, as well as the 2 vials of poison. They don't add much extra damage, but every little helps. After a few deaths here and there, it becomes apparent that trying to fight him while my health was low just wasn't going to work. With the potions gone, that meant my only option was to clear skies and then hide behind the rock wall while my health slowly regained on its own. This was easier when he was grounded, as it meant he couldn't hit me at all. Silver lining this time around is Parthenax was oddly aggressive, helping a ton to keep his brother distracted. If I'm gonna be honest, it was one of the easier fights with him, it was just tedious due to my limited defenses and healing. Once he's defeated, we do the usual, so Peace Council, trapping Odahviing, and Skuldafn. Skuldafn has some areas for stealth. Due to the stat being so high now, I was able to get a stealth crit on the Overlord when he was right in front of me, as somehow he apparently did not see me. I love this wacky game. I tried to cheese out soon, but he wasn't having it, so a proper fight ensued. This was the one time Lucian did anything this run, so give credit where it's due. Also, again, Fire Breath is legal, as Parthenax gifts you his understanding of it upon your first meeting. I could feel the infamous triple headbutt incoming each time he lowered my health, but by some stroke of luck, I managed to come out on top, even if I was bleeding out of every orifice. With that, the final, anticlimactic encounter where you basically play support with Dragon Rend, while the 3 old heroes you just met do most of the work. Not from a lack of me trying to pitch in as much as possible, mind you. At the very least, you are forced to get the final hit in, so you can effectively kill Steel regardless of your contributions. With that, the day is saved, I ignore the chanting and bolt straight for Soon to send me home, finishing the game and proving you can kinda beat Skyrim with only gifts and rewards. I had a wonderful time with this one. Like I said, it's been a long time since I messed around with the stealth builds in Skyrim. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that after the run was done, I went back and finished off the Dark Brotherhood questline in my own time. Yeah, it was only 3 more quick and easy kills, but I didn't care, I just wanted to keep playing. And remember, don't forget to check out the Fable Gifts and Rewards run that was uploaded today as well. Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.